Hello everyone, welcome back to Spilling the Tea podcast with Haylin and Kiki. OMG. This is episode 17. Kiki, come on.
Are we filming?
Yes.
Oops. Oh my God, you guys, we are 3 days away from our Youth Pride Fest, and I was just trying to regulate my emotions, trying to control my anger, because I know that, it's Pride Month and people like to get a little bit spicy, like jalapenos. And I know that 3 days from now, we are gonna be having an amazing party, a great time celebrating our LGBTQIA youth and their families, but I know that there are going to be protesters, so I'm just trying to calm down and trying to control my anger, because honestly, if I don't do this, I just wanna fight them.
Yeah, we had protesters every year, and the first year I cried. The second year, I didn't cry, but I was really angry. And then this year, I'm gonna be very calm, cool, collective, all the things. And I think we can talk today to our kids, but also our viewers or our listeners. How can we actually channel our anger and use it for productivity, or even how can we control our anger? So, do you have anger issues?
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah, I mean, it's a safe space.
Okay. How honest do you want me to be?
Yeah, just be honest.
Okay. I don't have anger issues now because I've done some growth. Shout out Sam, my amazing therapist. And
How many years did you go to therapy?
5 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And unfortunately, I had to stop because I just felt like he wasn't tickling my brain anymore. Sorry, Sam.
No,
he's still a great therapist.
I also think that people, I don't want to say should. We shouldn't put any kind of moral judgment on these things. There are people who go to therapy forever. Also, for me personally, my personal opinion is that the therapist should give you tools so that you can rely on yourself.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't just be going to therapy forever, over and over and over and over again, and not seeing any growth, not seeing any change. To me, that's kind of a red flag. So in a way, Sam did his job. And as a therapist, me too, I want to work myself out of a job. I'm not trying to see you for 50 years. You know what I mean? Then I'm not
Even
that
though she's
great
been
of it.
seeing her patients for 5 years.
But I mean, there's still, it's individualized, and sometimes people will, it's not 5 years straight. Sometimes people will get better.
That. Yeah.
And then maybe, I don't know, some crisis comes up and then they check back in, a tune-up. And that is actually very healthy to do.
Yeah, I think that was exactly what I was going to say, is that even though I've been seeing Sam for 5 years, it's really been I saw him for 2 years, then I saw him again when I got divorced, and then I saw him again for a little while when I got assaulted last year. So it hasn't really been that I've been seeing him for the last 5 years, every single week. But it's been I take breaks and then I come back. But definitely he's helped me a lot. And all that to say that before Sam, I used to have lots of anger issues. Oh my God. One time, I punched a windshield in my car and I broke it.
Damn, for real?
Yeah.
In Puerto Rico?
No, in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And then another time.
You're spicy.
Yeah, very spicy. But it's also because, sorry, Mom. This is just behaviors that I learned from my mom. My mom is a person.
Don't say anything about your mom.
No, she's done some growth. Shout out, Mom, if you're saying this. You know that you've done some growth, but lots of growth. But this is just learned behaviors that I didn't know how to I guess fix or unlearn.
Right.
I remember another time I also I don't know, I broke a wall with my hair dryer. So it was it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad and it was concerning. But yeah, I found ways to kind of channel those emotions because they were definitely very strong. I just didn't know what to do with them. They just felt
uncontrollable.
My small body could not hold it. It was just imagine if you're a visual person, you had a mason jar and you're filling it with sand and it's getting, filled to the top, but you still like try to put sand on it. I could not contain it, So I would just try to find unhealthy ways to like let go of that stress.
And a lot of times that's physiological. And people who are listening to this, you probably will resonate with what I mean is like the anger is like 0 to 100 in a nanosecond, right? And it's because you're getting this flood of like cortisol, your amygdala is going off, like you feel like you're, like you're being threatened. But I do want to educate people that anger is actually 99% of the time, some people argue 100% of the time, a secondary emotion. What a secondary emotion means is that, like, if you can imagine, what are those ice mountain things called? What? In the ocean?
I don't know.
Glaciers.
Icebergs?
Glaciers, yeah. ESL.
Shout out
ESL.
to our, our director.
So, like, the tip of the iceberg is, like, where you can kind of see the anger, but there's so many primary emotions under that. So,
oh my God, Prim, when you're editing this, please post a picture of that our followers can see it.
That'd be great. So, underneath the anger, you may not even be aware of what other feelings that you are feeling underneath the anger. A lot of times anger is like for me, and I'll share too in my house, there was a lot of anger, a lot of yelling, a lot of that kind of thing. So it is a learned behavior. It's kind of like programmed into you. And so sometimes it just becomes automatic, right?
Yeah.
And the more that you repeat a behavior, the more it becomes automated in your neural pathways. And so we understand how this happens. But it's really important to understand there is something underneath that anger. For instance, there might be fear, right? Like you might be reacting out of anger, but there's really fear under there, or there's anxiety, or maybe there's like sadness, loneliness, maybe you feel rejected, maybe you feel criticized. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you feel disrespected, and then it just comes out as anger. Do you resonate with that, or do you feel like there's other emotions underneath your anger?
Well, it honestly just feels like just a bunch of like rushed emotions, like a bunch of them that I used to not be able to identify. Now I do, but it definitely had to do with like being disrespected. I remember when I got assaulted, one of the things that I did to cope was I literally took myself to Crouching Lion, a hike for those that don't know.
I was so mad because I feel like that hike is very dangerous, and I was like begging
pouring.
her not to go, but at the same time, like I respect your autonomy.
Well, honestly, I feel like after my assault, like I can do anything and everything. That is probably the most unsafe I'll ever be. So I don't think I'll ever be scared of anything. Anyway, all that to say that, back then, my younger self honestly wouldn't have been able to cope with the anger I felt the next day or the next weeks.
Yeah.
But I took myself to Crouching Lion, and I remember I was so angry. I just had this like fight or flight mode, and I literally could not even move. I was just like frozen there. And then I just started crying. But when I got at the top, I just like yelled. Like I don't think I've ever screamed like that. And after that, like my anger was gone.
Wow. Like it was like that release.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's a healthier coping skill than a lot of other ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that fight or flight mode is definitely something that I experience a lot when I have a lot of anger. Would you mind explaining them what that fight or flight mode looks like?
Yes, absolutely.
Means?
And so a lot of times we remember like cavemen and all that, like primal days. What would happen is like your amygdala goes off. That's like this part of your brain, and then the prefrontal cortex is this frontal part of your brain. And this part of your brain really is for executive functioning, for rationality, like being able to control your emotions. But if your amygdala is going off, that really means that it's a life or death situation, especially back in the day from a primal standpoint. And so if there was like a woolly mammoth who's gonna eat you, then like we're not gonna have this podcast. Like it doesn't matter. We're just gonna like run. We're gonna run for our lives. And so it's automatic. It's very quick, and you have this rush. Everything else shuts down. Like your digestion shuts down. Like all of the functions in your body, because you're really saving all of that energy for fight or flight. But as our society has really technologically advanced, also so many things have happened, but a lot of times I really do want to focus on the abundance we have, meaning we're not worried about like where my next meal is going to come from, for the most part in America. And so our amygdala will go off for things like a bad text message or an email at work, or, like, why didn't Kiki do this? Or why didn't, Alex do this, right? And I'm giving you guys examples, and you're like, why am I getting so mad? Like, this is not even helpful, the way that I'm getting mad. And I think when you describe that amygdala going off for you too, like, you really were in fight or flight. I don't want to minimize that in any way. And so in that situation, I think it's warranted. But when your amygdala goes off, then you cannot access the prefrontal cortex. Like, it literally goes offline.
That's probably why I couldn't move.
And a lot of people actually can resonate with that, because even if they weren't assaulted, a lot of people get so angry where they can't speak. And I think all of us have really experienced something like that, and we understand why that happens. And so I think the number one thing you can do to improve your relationships, to improve your job satisfaction, to improve like even the relationship with yourself or your confidence level, is something we call emotion regulation. And that is just the ability to, you get to make a choice on how you're gonna react, right? A lot of times people think like, well, and I'm just preaching to myself, like, well, Kiki made me mad, or Alex made me mad, or my kid Matt made me mad, right? It's not actually anyone who is making you upset. It's your interpretation of that situation that is making you upset. And so I think that's a really important thing, to learn. And prevention is the key. Unfortunately, once your amygdala goes off, it's more like I have to apologize, so the prevention is key. So say like Kiki, 0 to 10, right? This is like your thermometer of like getting upset. When you're at a 10, you might be like, again, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, you might punch somebody or punch the windshield, okay?
It was painful.
But like, what you have to realize is, when am I at a 6 or a 7 or an 8? And then that's when you actually have to intervene. You can't allow yourself to get to a 10. Because once you get to a 10, it's like, no hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, I know you use this term, like the 3 C's. It's like, catch it, check it,
change it.
Change it, yeah.
So if you're like noticing, maybe we should do it, like for our listeners. When you start to get angry, what do you notice about yourself?
I start getting agitated.
Okay.
And pretty warm on the inside.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. Like,
I noticed
feel that.
Yeah, I noticed a body change, like a body temperature change in my system. I don't start sweating or anything, but I can feel it. You know what I mean?
Do you ever
it's like
feel defensive?
I shut down when I'm angry. I shut down and I stay quiet.
Okay.
And the bad thing about it is that someone would want to get an answer from me right away, but I just can't. Like, I'm so angry that I'm like, can you just like let me cool down and then we can like reevaluate and talk about it?
I see.
But I have been able to notice those patterns and like try to channel where I'm going next. Because if I don't catch it, I can't really change it. But it definitely took me some time to learn that.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to zoom out, like Kiki, and I know that like shutting down, it may seem like it's a really healthy coping mechanism, but if you shut down for too many days or too many hours, then it's actually not a good
Is that what's considered an avoidant person?
I mean, we don't really like to put labels on people, but I think that it can be avoidant like tendencies, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like maybe that's the safe way for you, right? Because if you're gonna shut down or like punch me in the face, then I'd rather you shut down. You know what I mean? Or even for me, like, I think just what we call this is triggers, like getting to know your triggers. For me, I have done a lot of self-reflection, a lot of therapy, like too many hours of therapy. And like my triggers are like if someone makes me feel criticized, if someone makes me, don't laugh, she's like, true. If someone makes me feel rushed, these are triggers, right? And so for me, I'm sometimes like starting to use my hands a lot, like, or I do get defensive. So when I hear myself getting defensive, I have to zoom out and be like, okay, that's like, Haylin, like just zoom out and figure out what is actually underneath that iceberg. Like, what is going on? Like, do you feel betrayed? Do you feel rejected? Do you feel like someone's lying to you when they're not? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you have any thought distortions going on? And I know this sounds very lame, like, oh, how can anyone do this? But if you practice, I promise you, like, you can develop a new mindset. And it's really amazing to see. But if your amygdala is going off, I have a couple of tips, because you're not going to be able to change your mindset when you're in that state.
Yeah.
You know? So, for instance, trigger warning, we have a lot of kids in the cafe who cut as a coping mechanism. They could be so angry, they could be so sad. And what we recommend instead is getting a piece of ice and holding it onto your arm until it melts, so that you still have that sensation. That could be a way to regulate, right? So we can't do any mindset work unless we're regulated. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Other things like changing the temperature of your body, like taking a very cold shower or a very hot one or a hot bath. Being able to, even some people put like a bag of ice, like a Ziploc bag, like right behind their neck, right on the lower back. Like some people even on their face. But these are ways to just, even exiting the situation is a very good one. And I use that one a lot. Like, do you ever see me walking out of the cafe?
Yeah.
Not that often, okay? But when I do
Quite
get
sometimes.
Like, you spill the tea.
Like, just like once a week.
It is not once a week. It's more like once a quarter. But if I get overwhelmed, I'll go take a walk, because I don't want anyone to see me in that state. Stop laughing at me, babe. And I don't want people to see me in that state, because I want to be responsible for the energy that I bring into the cafe, and exiting is my way. Like, I'll go for a walk, or I even will tell my husband, like, you need to leave for 30 minutes. I don't know what to tell you.
Like, why don't you leave? Right? No, but it's funny because sometimes and this work, especially with what Haylin and I are doing, we are constantly like barely taking any breaks. And I feel like that also causes you to get anger sometimes. So I would go to her office. I'm like, oh, she's not here.
Right? Burnout.
Yeah. So I'm like, let me check her location. And then she's like at the beach. I'm like, okay, she's taking a walk. She's definitely a little angry. She's trying to regulate herself, which I'm really proud of, because before it was not like that.
Right.
So it definitely also like took you some growth too.
Yeah, I think the whole entire business, social entrepreneurship journey is like...
Can trigger all that.
Yeah, it really just puts all your insecurities like right in front of you, and you have to, like, there's no other choice but to like face it head on. And, a big one, oh my gosh, how could I forget this one? This biggest trigger for me that I've learned is like when I feel like a failure, I feel like a bad boss, I feel like a bad mom, like I get angry at myself. So some people lash out and some people internalize. I guess I do both, but I think I like, mostly internalize and then have that anger towards myself, which is also very unhealthy. So, even as a therapist, I have to continue to do this mindset work. I have to continue to practice, because the more that we think about these things, the more it grows, and the more we have different ways to handle our anger, the more we create new neural pathways. And that's like science. Like, that's really cool. There's actually a recent study from Harvard, and they said like even all these people think they have all this self-awareness, and even the younger kids now with all the information from technology and social media, like
from
such
TikTok,
immediate access, right? People think they're so self-aware, but the study showed that actually only 10% of people are self-aware. Right. So, even though you think you are, you don't know. And so what's really important is that you ask others around you that you trust, like, hey, like, what is your, I don't know, it might be a weird conversation, but you know what I'm saying? Like, ask your mom, ask me, like, how do you see me in my anger? Or like when we just got into that argument, like, how can I do better? Or, you know what I mean? Just getting that self-awareness from other people around you. You know who's the best people to hear it from? Your kids. Oh my gosh.
Like Maya.
Yeah.
She has no filter.
Oh my gosh. She told me the other day, do you remember when she was like, oh, I noticed that you don't do that many things for yourself. That
was wild.
She's 5. I asked her to get me a water, like a bottle of water. And she's like, oh, I noticed that you don't do things for yourself, Mom.
I'm like, Maya? And then you were like, oh, tell me more about it.
Tell me more about it. Like, I want to know. Like, you're not going to get in trouble, baby. Like, we have this rule. You guys can say whatever you want as long as it's respectful.
And she was like, well, I just don't want to hurt your feelings. Like, okay, Maya, thank you. But it's really cute. And yeah, it's true. I feel like sometimes kiddos, they have no filter and they will tell you straight up.
Yeah, and I do try to take that, especially from my teenager, I try to take what he says and then apply it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean that you just let your kids do whatever, they want, but you do want to self-reflect and be like, yeah, maybe I need to really take a deep breath. And if my child's going through something, how about not be so reactive automatically? How about, understand that, okay, this might be difficult for them to be talking about. Actually, maybe let's look at, is this problem age appropriate? Whether your kid is 5 or 10 or 16, or even early 20s. Like, is this age appropriate? If it is, then maybe your reaction is a little bit bigger than what would be more helpful. Or does your punishment match the crime? Does the punishment match the crime?
How do you channel your own anger? Besides going on a walk, do you do anything else?
I promise you therapy.
Besides your purple app?
Yeah, I've been, honestly, therapy has been savior for me. I really wish other people in my family would go to therapy and learn how to do anger management for real. I know the older generations that I'm talking about, they just are closed off to therapy, and that's okay. But, bro, the reason
that is not okay.
Well, I mean, I have a different view because I don't think that they have bad intentions, and I think that they've gone through the kind of problems they went through is war, famine, immigrating to this country. I just, I have a different view for it, but what I want to say is in order for me to cope with that, I got to go to therapy. So I go to therapy to deal with the people in my life who don't go to therapy.
Oh my God, what a powerful quote.
And, I really believe in the product that we're selling. And I think that it can be life-changing. I think that, I still have my low days, obviously, but it never gets to the point that it did in high school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still have my bad days, but yeah, it's not going to get to the point where I'm going to break a wall, break a door, break a windshield.
What I'm trying to say to these people or to our kids in the cafe is I know you just pop off. I understand that, but it's not enough to say I'm just like that. You can change, and what that's going to require is just imagine do you decide oh, I'm going to yell now? No, you don't. You just yell. Do you decide oh, I'm just going to hurt this person's feeling? I'm just going to swear at this person. I'm just going to go off on my kid. You don't decide that. So to feel empowered, why don't you give yourself a choice? Figure out when you're at a 6, 7, or 8. Figure out what are your triggers. Figure out what are those primary emotions under, the secondary emotion of anger. And are you feeling yelling at your partner because you can't be vulnerable? You know what I mean? A lot of people would rather just yell at their partner or be calling them 20 times in a row. I'm not calling anyone out, but y'all know who you are. Calling their boyfriends 20 times in a row because they're angry, when what really should be going on is saying hey, there's a trust issue going on, or I'm traumatized from my last relationship, right? And that's why I'm calling you 20 times because you're 10 minutes late. A lot of people just have that pride in the way that doesn't allow them to be vulnerable, but the more vulnerable you can be, the closer and the higher quality your relationships will be. So.
Period. Another thing that I used to do back then is that I would get into an argument and I would just leave. I would just leave my house. That's not healthy. That is not healthy because and I know some teens do this too. What if something happens to you once you walk out of your home? You know what I mean? Or what if something happens to your parents? I think that even though it's hard, maybe zooming out and then coming back to it and having a more neutral conversation about it would definitely help. Also helps you to growth.
Right. And I don't want to gaslight anyone. A lot of our kids in the cafe are part of the LGBTQIA plus community. They have righteous anger. We have righteous anger. When people are bullying our kids, when people are saying that they shouldn't exist. You know, we feel that righteous anger, but is it helpful? You know, and can we channel that energy, like kind of what we've done, right? Like channel that energy and that anger into something that's going to be impactful, something that's going to help you out or help that kid out. That's where I want everyone to shift to, if possible.
And if you're a teen that is looking for support, here at Spility Cafe, not only we do individual sessions, we also do group. We actually have a volcano group that is specifically designed to help kiddos through their anger bursts. I think it's been really helpful for the ones that have participated from it.
Even suicidality. So anger can cause a crisis, right? And that rumination, like sometimes, yes, you're getting bullied, but that rumination of not being able to come out of those thoughts can create like our kids feeling suicidal. And what we know about suicide is that it's crisis driven. So if we can get that kid through that crisis, they will live another day. And so another way to prevent that is to be able to control your anger, because if you're so angry to the point of crisis and then you want, you know, to end it all, that's a permanent decision for a temporary situation, you know? And so I really want the kids to get empowered by this. I want the kids to feel like, you know what, I want to be empowered and get control over my anger. For all the parents out there, right? Like, I don't know, like trauma just sits in your brain more automatically than joyful memories. And so even for me as a kid, I've had a beautiful childhood, right? But I do remember like the yelling, the angry, the fighting, the abuse. Like I remember that. And so to all the parents out there, like let's try to level that out and let's really try to have our kids remember a lot of joy. You know, my whole goal in this life is really to kind of give more than I took from this world. And I just hope that other people are inspired to do the same. And that really starts with like looking at yourself.
Yes,
and
it really starts
yourself.
within.
Yes. So anyway.
That is all for today. Don't forget, 3 more days for our Youth Pride Fest. Please come out to celebrate. If you're not able to make it, we highly encourage you to donate through our link in bio on Instagram, spill_the tea cafe.
Or
you can
spread
also
the world.
donate.
Spread the world. Spread the word. There's going to be a youth fashion show. There's going to be a drag show. There's going to be an art exhibit. It's going to be really fire.
We're also going to be recognizing our amazing donors. So please be there. You don't want to miss that. Again, it's going to be happening in 3 days at
Mark's Garage.
In town.
Oh, wait. Thank you, Scarlett.
Thank you, Scarlett, for sponsoring this event. Shout out Joey and Lanai out there.
And Mark's Garage. Thank you for sponsoring this event. We love you guys.
Yeah, so just be there, be square. Check us out. Our website is phillyteacafe.org, and we'll see you soon.